What's the eeriest thing that has ever happened to you? When I worked in memory care, I had a patient that insisted that I had a little girl. She was 2, and she was born in December. I told the patient that I didn't have a 2-year-old girl. She swore up and down I had a little girl, until she looked at me soberly and said, "Oh, that's right, your baby died in March." What creeped me out was that I had a pretty brutal miscarriage in March, and I was due in October. At the time this exchange happened, the child I lost would have been 2 years old. Still freaks me out when I think about it. There was no way the patient would have known that. She barely knew my name. Our house was built in the 1920s and had 2 main floors. The living room, kitchen, dining room, and my parents' bedroom were on the first. The second floor had 3 bedrooms my siblings shared with me, 2 larger rooms and 1 small room with a cubby-like closet. Growing up, 3 of my older sisters tried sleeping in it, but all would get nightmares and lucid dreams seeing a pale little girl crouching, looking out through the cubby, or standing beside their bed. The longest any of them lasted was a year, before my parents gave up and turned it into a storage room. One night, while laying in bed, I kept hearing footsteps and shuffling in the storage room beside me. At first, I thought I was just hearing things, until my mom came upstairs and asked me if I was okay and why I wasn't in bed. I told her it wasn't me, but it was in the other room. I was just glad she heard it too, and that I wasn't going crazy, but I was extremely unsettled. Obviously, I couldn't sleep at all, and about an hour later, it started up again. I tried to ignore it the best that I could, until the storage room's doors slammed shut hard enough to latch it. The door hadn't been able to latch in years. I hid under the blankets, and my mom came to check on me again. She made me look in the room with her where we found things shuffled around. I slept with the lights on for the next month, and to this day will not go in it by myself. The air inside is heavy, and you can feel something is in there. For the next few days, my dad and I tried everything we could think of to debunk what happened, but we were never able to find the answer. I still get goosebumps just thinking about it. I had a really good friend that lived far away in a different state. I hadn't talked to him for a while, which wasn't entirely unusual in that period of our lives. I had a dream about him one night, and the next day I was washing my car and had a sudden, urgent feeling that I should call him. I went back inside to grab my phone, which had a voicemail from him asking me to call him, because he'd been in a coma for 2 weeks and had just woken up earlier that day. So I live right on the highway. As soon as I step off my driveway, it's 2 lanes with traffic flying by, except at night when it massively slows down. I work the closing shift at the nearby grocery store, so I'm used to being up late, so sometimes I take walks down the highway. A week ago, I'm walking home, which is to the northeast. In the last 30 minutes that I've been walking, a thick wall of fog has come into existence, and I am loving how beautiful it is. Now, my walks are about an hour and a half long on average. I walk to the grocery store I work at, which takes 30 minutes, then hang out for like 30 minutes again, then walk back home for another 30 minutes. And there's a stretch of highway with no nearby lights at all, between the grocery store and the bar. I was walking along that stretch, and a car drove past me heading northeast, the same direction I was heading. They quickly dissolve into the fog, except for their taillights, which shine happily through. I watch as the taillights stop shrinking and then disappear before becoming headlights, heading back towards me very slowly. The car drives past me again, and I think to myself, that's weird. They go maybe 60 feet southwest past me before I hear them try to U-turn again and not go into the gravel on the side of the road. In that moment, I dove off the highway and into the ditch where the gravel harshly slopes down and I lay as flat as I can. I watch as their headlights creep towards me and then see another pair come from the north, which seemed to make the U-turner freak out and make another U-turn heading southwest again. I waited for a minute or so, thinking that I would hear a car door shut as they would be getting out to try and find me, to do whatever they had wanted to do, before I climbed back up and sprinted to the bar, where I felt safer knowing other people were nearby. The entire rest of my walk was horrifying as I waited for the car to return. I haven't taken a real walk since then, which sucks because it was so nice being so totally alone and just moving and loving the world. When I was a kid, I had a very vivid case of deja vu. I had a detailed memory of owning this pink ballet-themed journal. One day, I actually got the exact journal from my grandma. I was very confused upon receiving it, since I thought I already had one. I searched high and low for the one that I thought I had before, and I could never find it. Another time, I got a watch for Christmas. I am notorious for losing/breaking jewelry, so I decided to wear that watch in bed. Woke up the next morning, and it was gone. Never found it again, and we even moved from that house. When I was around 11 or 12, I watched an episode of Scooby-Doo in my bedroom. I started imitating the way old Scoob said the word spooky, all drawn out and doing this token scary-sounding fluctuations. I kept repeating it aloud, faster and faster while walking around the room. I let out one last long spooky while facing an aluminum container on my nightstand. It moved off the edge and crashed to the floor. Startled, I ran out of the room. The container was about 8 inches in diameter and maybe 7 inches tall. It was a Snickers holiday gift tin. In it were the various trinkets accumulated during a childhood in the 80s. Micro machines, Happy Meal toys, freebie keychains, etc. It was about half full and had some weight to it. It was near the edge of the nightstand, but not hanging over it. Now maybe the air currents from the SP sound and spooky caused it to move the 2 to 4 inches or so to fall. It was probably about 4 feet away when I spoke towards it. I don't know, but it's something that creeped me out, and I wish I had a good explanation for it. My sister had started undergrad and was home for the summer. A guy called and wanted to have her take part in a university survey. I said she wasn't home, so the guys asked me to do it. I was 16 at the time, and the questions started out normal enough, but they got more risque and sexually oriented as it went on. I thought, well, it's a university study. I guess they could be studying that kind of stuff. An hour goes by and I'm like, look, I gotta get to work. And he says, don't go, I'm almost finished. And that's when I hung up. I think about the midway point was when the questions got sexual, and probably also when he started jerking off. I asked my sister later, hey, did you sign up for a phone survey? She said no, and when I told her about it, she agreed it was just some creep trying to get off. A while back, a buddy of mine was in my room playing League of Legends. My door was open because of how hot the day was, so I wanted to have some airflow to cool us down. About to head into a team fight, something moved in my peripheral vision, and I swear it was a tiny kid. I stopped and looked at my buddy and asked if he just saw a kid at my door, and he agreed that he saw a small child. I got up and started to look around. From what I saw was a tiny kid with a blue shirt and black bottoms. At the time, my parents had some guests over, so I wanted to get back to the game and just assumed it was a child of theirs. Later, after everything died down, I asked my parents if the people who came over had a kid with a blue top and black bottoms, and they just said that they didn't have a kid. To this day, I never found out if what we saw was real or not. Just kinda weird that we both saw the same thing. Not to me, but to my oldest brother, when he was about 5 years old. He's 36 now, but he has sworn by the story ever since, but he hasn't told it in years, so I figure it's a hard subject for him. Anyway, I had my mom tell me again how it happened, and she said we lived in a part of Corpus Christi in Texas, where it was kind of rural, but still had neighbors. We lived next to a canyon. So one night, he wakes up needing to go to the bathroom, and he brings his blanket with them, because it was cold. After exiting, he saw strange lights shine through the windows, illuminating the entire inside of the house, so he goes downstairs. Seeing as how everything in the house is dark again, he gets a little bit scared and goes back up the stairs, but this time, he puts the covers over himself, and he sort of gets on his elbows and knees and moves like a soldier would through the mud up the stairs. That's when he said he felt footsteps on him, so he stops moving. And we had one dog at the time, but he said he felt so many footsteps on him that he actually had bruising the next day. He said the footsteps lasted for a good couple minutes, like things marching across and all over him. He could smell cardboard all of a sudden when he peeked from under the covers, and saw strange, short figures that smelled heavily of wet cardboard. Too scared to move, he eventually fell back asleep on the stairs, under his covers, and my mom found him the next morning. That's when he told her about it. My mom did believe him to an extent, because of how afraid he was, and how much the experience stuck with him. But she only fully believed absolutely 100% when he was a teenager, and she read the book called Communion. The author described the aliens smelling of cardboard, and other descriptions that my brother told her that in no way could he have known from the book. He was still a child at the time. She threw the book away and never continued reading it. Creepy thing that happened to me years ago, back when I was still in high school. I was staying over at my friend's house one night, and it was probably around 1 a.m. on a Saturday night, when we were still partying and playing video games. You know how it is, just doing stuff like that. Anyway, him and his friends asked me to go downstairs to the basement to grab them some soda cans in the fridge. It's a 2-story house, excluding the basement, and nobody else is home except us, probably around 7 people including myself. The first floor is dark and dead silent, but I make my way to the basement door and go downstairs. I open the door and hit the lights for the basement, enter, and get some soda from the fridge. I begin to make my way back upstairs from the basement and hit the lights again and close the door behind me. The moment I close the door and turn off the lights, I suddenly hear this rapid ascension coming from the basement. It sounded like someone in heavy boots was running up the stairs and was about to slam open the door any second. Within a split second, I drop the cans of soda, flinch, and immediately put my arms up in a defensive stance. I was mostly just covering my face in fear and panic, but I was bracing for whatever the hell is about to come out of that door. Nothing. I grab the cans and run back upstairs, never looking behind me. I go back up to greet my company, and my friend and his friends look at me and start guffawing in laughter, saying that I look like I'd just seen a ghost. To which I respond, yeah, no shit. My friend asks me what happened, and I tell him there's someone else in the basement. They start to get this semi-serious look on their faces, and I implore each and every one of them to go downstairs with me to the basement. 3 of us, including my friend, go downstairs and approach the basement door. My friend cautiously opens the door and hits the lights, with us slowly making our way down. Nothing there still. We look around the place to see if there are any signs of a possible intruder. Nope, nothing. Nothing broken, out of place, missing, no footprints or strange smells, nothing at all. We check every nook and cranny of the entire house, even some parts outside, but we yield nothing. We head back inside. The rest of the guys stay. As for me, I decided to call it a night and leave. I still have no idea what happened. I've been trying to rationalize it ever since. Maybe I was hallucinating. I think the most likely explanation was that those assholes were screwing around with me, purposefully stomping up and down to make it sound like there was someone in the basement rushing up the stairs just behind me. That's probably also why they were laughing at me when they saw my face. Or maybe they were making a lot of noise, but with no malice. It was just a coincidence in the moment, and nothing more. But still, it felt so real, and it was deadly quiet on the first floor, so I'm quite sure it couldn't have really been them, otherwise I would have heard them from above. And they genuinely looked worried when I told them I thought there was someone else in the basement. I think it's just best that I don't know. Hallucinations, pranks, or otherwise. I still look behind my back when I'm alone in my own house to this day, especially with the basement stairs. I'm especially cautious of any footsteps or thumping sounds that even remotely sound like someone walking in boots when I'm alone indoors. I used to work night shift in the emergency room from 5 p.m. to 5 a.m., doing patient registration and insurance verification. One night around 2 a.m., a car comes screeching up to the main emergency entrance. There was a woman doing CPR on a man in the front passenger seat. The nurses came running in with the doctor and put him on a stretcher to the trauma room. They worked on him for a good 10 minutes before they pronounced him, and as soon as they pronounced him, the power went out. The air got super cold and thick, and all of the hair on the back of my neck and arms stood straight up. Within seconds of the power going out, the backup generator came on, and the chime went off to say that a new baby was just born. It was the eeriest, creepiest, freakiest thing that ever happened in the 2 years I worked in that hospital. One night, my parents were out. It was about midnight, and I, being the eldest, was watching my brother. My brother was going into 6th grade at the end of his summer, along with his friend, and my sister was going into 7th with her friend, and then my 5-year-old brother was also there. My older brother, we'll call him B1, and his friend, we'll call F1, were downstairs playing games on their phones with me. We were at the kitchen table, which is right next to the back door. I was focused on my game until I saw a flash of light. I didn't think it was storming outside, but whatever, and no sound came with the light. F1 speaks and says, "Did anyone else see that light?" I said, "You saw that too?" I sat there for a second trying to think of what it could be, and I started getting a little creeped out. The reason that freaked me out so much was because that same week, 3 days before in fact, this car had begun to follow me and my brother down the street on our way home from the pool around 10 p.m. There was a flashing light, probably a camera flash, going off from the back seat a bunch. I started walking up the driveway I was next to, and the car sped off. I went upstairs and decided to get a head check on everyone, and at least move our gaming operation upstairs. As I'm going up, I check the window by our stairs, and the night sky is clear. I ran up, got B2, and told my sister and her friend, who we'll call F2. My sister is not calm at all in situations like this, and she began to freak out. I was pretty unnerved myself, but I kept my composure. We locked ourselves in my parents' room because it was the only room with a lock, to make us feel a little safer. F2 peered out the window, and she thought she saw someone standing outside, but she couldn't tell, and neither could I when I checked. I figured it could just be some kids playing with flashlights in the street behind us. My parents came home after we told them, and we all went downstairs to talk. I see another flash from the living room, and I think about it for a second. Feeling much better my parents were home. I said, "Anyone else see that flash?" My sister and F2 hadn't seen a flash, but F1 says, "I did actually." We went to bed, and it wasn't until the next morning I realized a flashlight couldn't illuminate our whole back door from the street behind us, as it was in front of the houses behind us a good 200 yards at least. Nothing else came out of that, but some other stuff has happened in our backyard, just not as major as that. B1 says he saw something white dart across our backyard in the middle of the night, but no one else was down there because he stays up the latest. Another incident occurred at around 11 to 12 p.m. this time. This was recent, almost a month ago. I was sitting on my bed listening to music when I heard a series of knocks coming from my wall. It wasn't just a bang, it was a pattern, and it came one more time right next to my head. I kept listening to my music, thinking my sister probably did it. Not 5 minutes later, though, it happens again. I get up to tell my sister to stop banging on the wall, when I realized the banging was actually coming from the other side. But the other side of the wall is the backyard, and I'm on the 2nd floor. I double-checked that my sister didn't bang on the wall, but she says she didn't. We looked in the back, but saw nothing, and that was that. That's all of my experiences right now, and hopefully it stays that way for a while. When I was about 11 or 12, we lived in this house out in the country in South Dakota. It was a pretty big place, but only had 3 bedrooms, which my 2 brothers and I had to share. I slept on a twin-size mattress on one side of the room, closest to the door, and my oldest and youngest brothers shared a bigger bed on the opposite side. Every night before going to bed, my brothers and I would pray out loud together, and afterwards we would make the sign of the cross over our bodies. Then we would kiss the cross that we made with our fingers. Well, for some reason, one day, my mom told us not to kiss the cross anymore. We all agreed, and later that night, we got done praying. We made the sign of the cross again, then I heard a kiss pretty close to me. It was dark in the room, and I just said out loud, "Guys, Mom said not to do the kissing thing anymore." Which they both replied at the same time, "We didn't. We thought you did." I got really bad goosebumps and prayed silently until I fell asleep that night. Pretty creepy. This recurring dream. For the last 4 nights in a row, I keep having a nightmare with Jeff Goldblum in it. So we're in this super dark house, both wearing sick leather jackets, like some Hardy Boys type stuff. Anyway, we found 3 bodies with no skin. I say, what the fuck? Jeff Goldblum says, you shouldn't swear, but yeah, this is wild. We see a side door. I open it. 50 yards back is a steel building, and there's a gravel driveway leading up to it, and lining this driveway is a wooden post fence. About 30 feet away, there's this super weird little thing, probably about 3 foot tall, with a big bulbous round head, with no eyes, just black pits. And it gets just a bit closer. You see this thing stitched together, with patchworks of skin hanging loosely off, because it's all just way too big. It sees me, then rips off its arm skin, and there's this gnarled looking gray arm that's super skinny, and it points at me. It lets out this soul-wrenching screech and slowly walks toward me. Jeff Goldblum puts his hand on my shoulder and says, you should wake up now, buddy. And then I do. Every night I've had the dream, this thing gets closer. Last night, I could smell it even after I woke up. So it's my first year of college. I flunked my calculus exam so bad. 80% of the class got a score of 15% and below, and I was one of them. I was pissed at myself and really depressed about what happened. I went out of the dorm later that same night, around 1 a.m. I was just crying outside my dorm when a guy approached me and asked me what happened. I told him everything, and the pressure that was building up inside me because of college. He stayed with me and comforted me about what happened, and told me to look at it in another angle. I was really relieved and felt better talking to the guy. I asked him where he lived so I could treat him to lunch sometime for the help he gave me. We bid farewell, and it was the best sleep I've had ever since I went to college. I never saw the guy's face since the place was pretty dim, but he told me he lived underneath our room. The housing complex I'm in is on the side of a hill, so the architecture is a little weird. The next morning I felt more alive, and I immediately head to my landlady to ask about the guy I met last night. She told me that nobody has ever stayed in that room, even gave me the key to it. I went and saw a really dusty room that definitely hasn't had anybody live in it for years. Ever since then, I always wonder who, or what, was the guy I talked to, and I never got to thank him properly. I saw a shadow person. When I was about 17, I was at my friend's apartment building, which his parents owned. It was a pretty old building in the Pilsen neighborhood of Chicago, and according to his dad, it used to be owned by Al Capone. But I'm not sure how true that was. We had an apartment on the top floor that they let us use to just hang out, and it allowed us easy access to the roof, so we could go and smoke cigarettes. One night, we were about to go up, but I had to pee, so I told him I'd meet him up there. After I was done, I went up the stairs to the attic portion that was connected to the roof. There were no lights, so we always used our phones to guide us. We had those old flip phones without lights, so you only had the light from the screen to navigate the cluttered mess that was up there. As I made my way to the rooftop door, I saw a shadow pass by me. Now, this wasn't like the shadow of something moving with the light of my phone. This shadow felt solid, like a person. I followed the direction it went, thinking it was my friend. I kept saying that I knew it was him and to stop playing around. It passed me a few more times, before heading to the other side of the attic, and that's when I heard my friend's voice from downstairs. Apparently, he had gotten a call from his girlfriend, and was in another room talking to her the whole time. I have no idea what that shadow figure was, but it really freaked me out, and I told my friend what happened, and that I did not want to go back up there. Back in 1994, I was in my final year of high school. The street I lived on, my best friend also lived on. We had known each other since around 4 or 5, went all through middle school together, and played at each other's homes endlessly. So this one day, I felt a bit out of sorts. I couldn't really explain it, and I decided to go for a walk to get some fresh air. Something that I rarely did at the time. The previous time I did something like that was probably months, if not a full year before this time, so it really wasn't a regular routine. I walked down the street and past his house. I saw his mom putting out some garbage for the next day's pickup, but I didn't say anything to her. I remember feeling very weird as I passed their house. I don't know the best way to describe it. Not sad, maybe depressed or anxious. Unsettled is probably the best word I can think of. I kind of shrug it off and continued my walk for the next 15 minutes or so, and then return home. After being home for about half an hour, there's a knock at my door. My mom answers it and says it's for me. So I go down, and there's my friend, eyes red and puffy, face wet with tears. How my mom completely missed this is beyond me. So I ask him what's wrong, and he blurts out, "My dad died today." I had known his dad for as long as I'd known him, so it was a bit of a shock. We sat on my porch and talked for about an hour. It was very uncomfortable for me, since that sort of thing was very new. I didn't know what to say, so I let him do most of the talking. Now the caveat to this was, his dad died of lung cancer. His mom didn't want anyone to know for whatever reason, so I wasn't told. However, I had 2 hints months earlier that something was up. I saw a wheelchair in their house once, but his dad was in the medical profession, so I just assumed it was something to do with that. And the second, I once saw his dad with a baseball cap on in the house as he walked upstairs. Something I had never seen him wear ever, inside or out. But even with all that info, and even suspicions that maybe he was fighting cancer in the back of my head, why, on that specific day, did I need to get out and go for a walk? And why did I head toward their house? And why did I pause by the house and feel a weird sensation? Probably all coincidence, but who knows?